Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvelously well. This is a video you asked for. I've had a bunch of comments asking for us to try out the Looptrotter SA2RATE. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to try it out. Okay, so this is rather wonderful because not only are we going to try it out, I'm going to wire it up now. I'm going to put it on drums and vocals and bass. I don't know, put it on all kinds of things. But we're also going to do a giveaway. So thank you ever so much, Looptrotter. Thank you everyone that asked for us to do this because the company turned out to be rather nice and gave us this unit to give away. So thank you ever so much. Let us open it up. Okay. Here. Oh, well, it's substantial. Always a good sign. As you know, saturation is something that cannot be underestimated. It really does help bring energy to a mix. It also glues things together. It rounds off transients so things appear louder without having to use excessive amounts of compression and limiting. So it's kind of a nifty thing, to say the least. So I'm excited to hear this. Start by getting it out of the box. Oh, wow. So look. There it be. So it's good. It's in stereo, so we can try it on the mix bus as well. We've got a drive control. We've got a low, safe, and a high smooth, and it looks like a tilt EQ there. I don't know. I suppose we'll find out by hearing it. And then there's a wet and dry control, which is actually kind of nice. So it means it will get us a lot more volume because it's not just a balance between dry and wet. It's actually the dry signal and the wet. So you can get really into balancing this out really nicely and keep the level perfect. Anyway, rather wonderful. On the back is, oh, I see, both XLR in and out and also 1/4 inch in and out. Obviously balanced. I presume these are balanced as well. We can check out. This one is unbalanced, so it has an instrument input as well, so you could plug in a guitar. It's made in Poland, which my wife will be happy about. She's Polish. And there's a lot of really good Polish companies out there. A lot of really great European companies, full stop. But it's rather wonderful this is made in Poland. Like I say, it's heavy. There's some schnizzle going on in there. Let's fire it up and give it a listen. So, couple of things to note. I've changed my shirt. Yes, it's a little later on, we're filming now, and I'm wearing my famous black shirt because apparently the patterns annoy people. So we got rid of that. Okay, we have a much requested device here, as you know, the Looptrotter. I've had lots of people ask me about this company, so we talked to them. And this, of course, is the SA2RATE 2. This is the second version, the latest one. I have been told that this is the first production model and the first one in the US where we currently are. So that's all rather wonderful. I want to try a couple of things. I want to try it on the mix bus, on an actual mix. So I pulled up a mix here. I've also got a vocal, I've got drums, actually several drum tracks, bass guitar and a piano track. But I think mainly what I really want to hear it on is a full-blown mixed track. Because so many people I know use these kind of devices, these saturation, these harmonic devices. I had some great results using these kind of devices, particularly on a Joe Perry song when we did a cover of Man of Peace by Bob Dylan for Amnesty International. What I've done here is I've taken a song by an artist called Lilly in our old band called Little Empire, and we are going to use this to kind of grit it up a bit and add some drive. It's a pop rock song. It has live drums, but it also has lots of programming elements. So let's have a listen with everything turned off. What I like about this track and why I wanted to use it is because it's got a lot of low end going on in it. And it's a lot of high mid information. It's pretty stacked, but it's not, even though it's printed fairly hot, it's not square waved out. So it's got enough dynamics in there and enough transients in there to trigger some nice harmonics. So here we have the unit. Got it nicely set up, so hopefully you can see everything I'm going to do. Everything's on 0. Let's go to obviously this is the dry volume here and here's the wet. This is going to be really beautiful because it means I can sort of use it in a parallel kind of method. We've got Track 1, track 2, we're coming in balanced, but also on the back is other line inputs, and I think you can even plug an instrument in the back. So we're using it obviously balanced in and out of a standard I/O that any of you can have. It's not an expensive I/O. Okay, so let's go to that portion of the track, and I am going to initially bring up the dry control, then start driving it and bring up the wet. It's going to be a 3-part process. So there's a decent amount of drive signal in there. Now I'll start adding some drive. You can see the processing going on. Occasional peaks. Now let's bring in the wet signal. One more time. It's nice what it's doing. Now, I've got the PAS meters available here just so we can see as well as hear. You can hear what it's doing, but I also want to illustrate something about saturation, which is really beautiful. Look at the peak value here. It's bouncing around about minus 14.5 here, 14.8, so roughly. Turn the processing off. Barely changed, but listen, so the peak value is staying the same. It's still hitting those same peaks, but the great thing about saturation is it starts to grab hold of things and give you a little bit more girth. One of the things you hear is the low end starts to kind of like get a little tougher. And it's just on the verge. It's pretty perfect, actually. I think this is like a huge step forward, but I'm actually going to drive it even harder. So let's go up to like 4 on here. It's going to start peaking quite a lot on the process. Have a listen. Noticeable difference in volume. We'll bring down the dry a little bit, try and get it somewhere back to the same level. So it's quite a lot fuller. One thing you'll notice as the drive comes up, with a track like this, which has got that big kind of synth bass with electric bass playing together, the low end starts to become a little fuzzy. You know, it starts to distort a little early. So what they've done, the good folks at Looptrotter, is they've added this low safe. You see, it looks a little bit like a tilt EQ. It's not a tilt EQ, but I suppose in some ways maybe it is. But what it is like it's allowing some of that low to drift through before getting annihilated. So before it gets all crunched up. So let's see how that feels. I like what it's doing. I mean, you could argue maybe a little less drive, but you can hear what it's adding, which is really kind of beautiful. I really like this. So nice idea. Let's see now, if we hit the high smooth, how it might smooth out a little bit of that harshness and kind of it's particularly the high mids. That's very nice. That's really, really nice. Now there's really no perceptible volume difference, just a general fullness and additional harmonics. Really nice. I'm gonna pull it in and out and have a listen. That's great. That's really what these units are absolutely fantastic for on master buses. And the fact that there's a lot of ways of getting there, the fact that we can drive it, but then of course, you know, we can get that process to be the way we want it to sound. Maybe that's a little aggressive. You could pull it back a bit, and then you can bring in the wet. You can bring in how much of that drive you've created and then balance the dry signal with it. I love the low safe in particular because the low end does tend to sort of like fuzz out a little early in most of these kind of devices. So that's a smart idea. And then the high smooth is stopping that sort of really painful high mid area. You know, if it gets too gritty, it's a little bit too much. So in general, that feels like a win. I mean, that sounds like I'm getting everything I want from a saturation device without it sounding brittle and disgusting. It's nice. And I think for a lot of us, it's a really nice effect because it's going to give us volume. It's going to give us girth without peak values coming up because everything is just getting a little bit of hair around it. A nice unit indeed. Okay, so let's go to some drums. I'm going to leave the same settings on and see what we've got. Really nice on the ambience, but hey, let's get a little bit more aggressive. So I'm leaving the low safe and the high smooth on, but I'm gonna... The snare's poking its head off quite considerably, so I'm gonna hit it a little harder on the drive. Now it makes the drums sound really, really boring without it in. I mean, that's just the reality of getting into that kind of stuff. Now, obviously this is super dynamic on the snare, but it's been an interesting... I like the way all the ambience is coming up. It's obviously annihilating the snare first, so the kick comes up. Great. Really, really tasteful way of controlling transients and adding more energy. Okay, so let's listen to these drums. Great. I mean, just immediately doing really, really cool stuff. And that's just on the default. Now I'm going to go to a piano sound just for the heck of it. Now I hit it harder coming out because the level's quite low inside my session. So I'm turning it up and I'm hitting it pretty hard. One more time. So each stereo file you can balance to taste and make it do what you want it to do. So I'm going to listen to it on a vocal here.
Never thought it would hurt this much. I'm living another kind of pain.
I think what I love about what it's doing on the vocal, I use a lo-fi plugin quite a lot, which is a little indiscriminate. Sometimes I'll use, like, I've even used SansAmp on vocals. I always feel like when I'm using a plugin, I'm adding, you know, arbitrary things. But this is feeling a lot more controlled and subtle. I love the low safe and the high smooth in. I feel like it's going to come in a lot unless I'm trying to totally destroy something. I think I'm going to subtly want to just add things to it.
From the moment I left, I knew it'd be hard.
Let's listen to that phrase again.
From the moment I left, I knew it'd be hard.
I mean, it's helping pull everything together. I mean, it's a very dynamic vocal, which is going to need like compression. I've got a little bit going on here.
From the moment I left, I knew it'd be hard.
Now add this afterwards.
From the moment I left, I knew it'd be hard.
All of that hard. I love what it's doing. It's just getting gritty at the front there and letting the rest breathe. Really, really tasty. And last but no means least, here is a bass guitar. I've taken the low safe off. So I'm actually enjoying that little fuzz that's coming on the low end. Let's put the low safe back on. Yeah, so what's nice about that is it's evening out the bass. I mean, the bass is pretty, there's not a huge amount of transients going on, but the initial hit on every single one is like, bam, 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 bam. So it's nice, it's evening that out. It's making the bass feel actually a lot fatter and more consistent. To be honest, you know, this is one of those things, I suppose, if you had it in your rack, you could process through it multiple times, especially if you're trying to get like analog kind of results. What you could do is you could set this up on your bus and then process your drum files, process your bass, and then sum the whole thing together, and it will sound pretty phenomenal. Or you can just do what we originally did and use it across your master bus. Just be careful when you're using saturation. You don't want maximum going every time. It will just add up to a whole bunch of but in small amounts and incremental amounts and done tastefully like this is going to take that digital edge off your mixes and give it a lot of analog kind of stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, there's many, many units that do this. I was just intrigued by this, and you guys asked me, guys and girls asked me about this because of its price point and because the company are very popular with a lot of you out there. So I really appreciate you pushing us towards this. Don't forget, you can enter to win this. Please, if you've used any Looptrotter gear or used this back in Europe or anything else, please let us know. I think we have one of the first ones, but let us know. Please enter to win. Love to know what you think of the company. So far, I've just been blown away. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.